This is about implanted medical devices, and it's not something that I expect that there'd be a huge audience for, but we're going to try and make this fun if we can, but certainly informative. I've been working for about 4 years as a patient advocate for my brother, Stephen Baker. If you'll stand up, Stephen, turn around. He has an implanted elbow that failed after just 4 months. So that's what started my advocacy. I'm going to see if this works. Okay. So this is who I am, patient advocate. This is a photograph of my brother and I when we were in D.C. the very first time we went in 2009, when we were invited by the, what was it, the American, Justice, Alliance for Justice. And we were with other patient advocates and patients who had had medical harm. The other reason why I'm here is because the Mayo Clinic saved we're customers of the Mayo Clinic. Our family has a long experience in Rochester, Minnesota. My father, when he was just 2, he's 90 now, when he was just 2, he had a really serious broken leg, and he was taken to the Mayo Clinic, and miraculously they were able to reset his leg, and he was fine. At age 2, this is a pretty serious injury. And then again, when I was about 10, my father became the city administrator in Rochester, Minnesota, and part of his beginning of his job was they put him through the Mayo Clinic for tests, and they discovered that he had a malignant cancer on his leg. And the Project Ship Hope, I don't know if any of you know about this, but they went around the world, surgeons from the Mayo Clinic, and they had just come back from the Project Ship Hope. And my father had really life-saving surgery, and they were able to save his leg and graft some skin, and he was fine. He became actually a postman a number of years after that, and he spent his life outside in the severe cold of Minnesota, walking and delivering people's mail. So he did very well. But also my mother, she's elderly too. She's had a number of implants, and which went some well, some not. And then in 2008, my brother had this elbow implant that after 4 months failed. So the Tournier symbol up there is the company that made the implant that my brother has, and they're a Minnesota company. They're a small business in Minnesota. They say they're from Minnesota, but also when it's convenient, they're from Amsterdam, or when it's convenient, they're from France. The purpose of implants, I'm talking about the elbow, but basic reason that you get an implant is to reduce pain or to increase your function, whatever it is. When my brother got this implant, it did neither. In fact, it made his life worse. So what happens if an implant fails? We all assume that there's a safety net somewhere. Not so much. We got the runaround. We did what we had heard was the protocol. You talk to the doctor first, the surgeon. The surgeon is a Mayo Clinic on-salary physician, but he also was the designer of the device. So he worked for Tournier. Tournier also comes into the Mayo Clinic and trains surgeons. So there's a relationship between Mayo Clinic and Tournier. When we started asking questions about what kind of implant he had my brother had in his body, it took us 4 months to get the information. We asked the doctor to report it as a failed device. It is a failed device if you have a revision surgery, which is what happened after 4 months. They took out 2 parts. The doctor would not admit it was a failed device. He wouldn't report it to the FDA, so we did that. Then we discovered that the FDA, although you can report it by yourself online, the MedWatch, we have a number, we have the confirmation. We went into Freedom of Information to find out what kind of investigation had happened, and they said they lost the file. Kind of interesting. We were also told to contact the hospital trustees. That was very difficult. There's no information on or there wasn't, I haven't checked recently, but there was no information on the Mayo Clinic website about how you would contact trustees. And the trustees this is a nonprofit hospital. They have the responsibility of responding to the community. They're the ones who set up the rules for the doctors. there was no way of contacting them, so I had to go through the CEO. His name was Dennis Cortez, his office, and I sent certified registered letters to each of the trustees. I did have their names. There was never a response. So we contacted the state attorney general, and the state attorney general said, well, I have no power here because once a device is approved by the FDA, it's a federal thing. So you have to go to the FDA and federal court. So we truly, what I'm trying to tell you is you will get the runaround. Nobody takes responsibility but the patient. Getting back to the medical board, Minnesota Medical Board was one of the suggestions. I knew not to do that. You go after the doctor with a lawyer, and then all of a sudden nobody. It's a small community of orthopedic surgeons. You go after one, you have the rest of them after you as well. Well, essentially for all doctors. These doctors who are doing more heinous things than the doctor did to my brother, the medical board wants to rehabilitate the doctors, not to discipline them. So that's what's happening. In fact, in this article in the Star Tribune, it said that Minnesota was absolutely at the bottom of the medical boards for disciplining their doctors. So that really wasn't an avenue for us. And probably in your mind you're saying, well, why don't you do a lawsuit? Think about it. Lawsuit, Mayo Clinic. I mean, the lawyers that we did even chat with looked at us like, you're crazy. Even the congressional people who were involved with constituent services said, I haven't even heard of anybody who actually got anything out of the Mayo Clinic. There was one woman who got tattooed by some doctor on her private parts, and that was the only one that actually was able to get through with a lawsuit. So it's very difficult. This one, patient harm. I'll give you a chance to read the cartoon up there. Can everybody read that one? I'm right here in the room. No one even acknowledges me. FDA, when they had a meeting a week ago, they said, we were the ones who decided to have this meeting about unique device identifiers for implanted medical devices. It wasn't the FDA. It was the stacks and stacks of people who have been harmed by implanted medical devices. That's what prompted the 4-day meeting. Patient harm. Patient harm is really, really, really serious. Harm sounds like more of a gentle word than what it is. What happened to my brother? He didn't lose his life. He did lose his civil rights. The only way he can get any kind of justice is to go to federal court. How do you do that when you're already in financial peril? You're hurting. Does your family need more of this? So you don't have civil rights to state court when this happens. Loss of function, loss of job, loss of family. A lot of families split up when this kind of thing happens. Financial loss, and probably more seriously, loss of trust. We don't have trust in our congressional representatives. We don't have trust in the hospital trustees. We don't have trust in our medical system. It's a huge loss. Why is this happening? Well, you need to understand the terms. PMA, that's the pre-market approval. And this is the clinical testing that's required before a new device goes onto the market. But there's also a process called 510K, which is much more popular because all you have to do is point to a device that's similar to the one that you've just designed or innovated, gets grandfathered in. Class 3 devices are the most serious devices, the ones that are permanently implanted. One would think that the elbow implanted into my brother's arm would be a Class 3 device. No. It went through a 510K process. That should be a Class 2 device, a device that's cleared through 510K. But if it's implanted in the body, it should have been classified as a Class 3, and it should have been a pre-market approval. A couple of years ago, the FDA knew it was having issues with the 510K process, so it hired or it commissioned the Institute of Medicine to look into this. And the Institute of Medicine came through a year ago and said that the current 510K process is flawed based on its legislative foundation, which means that our Congress needs to change this. Otherwise, this will stay forever, that they can just point to another device that looks like theirs and it gets cleared with no clinical testing. So we need to demand that of our congressional representatives. So this is a chart that I just couldn't believe when I first saw it. So the number of new devices that come onto the market each year, you can see from 2001 to 2011, the number of new ones are actually going down. That's a good thing. These medical device innovators would say, well, this is new and improved, and they get it on the market very easily. There would often be only very slight changes, no changes that necessarily meant that they were better devices, but they could charge more. It was a new device, so they could convince us that this is an innovation. And usually if you hear the word innovation, you think, oh, this must be customized, this must be special, this must be better than what was on the market before. Not true. Well, fortunately, there are fewer and fewer new medical devices. We don't necessarily need all these innovations. But the number of tested devices has actually gone down. So we're not getting more tested devices, although we think that's what the FDA is doing. Their mission, their only mission of the FDA is supposed to be safe and effective medical devices. But recently the Congress and the FDA has been starting to talk about jobs and getting these things to market. So we as patients are, getting the most new and innovative medical device. But I hope that you come out of this session today being a bit more questioning about whether or not we need these brand new devices. This was another interesting release that just came out at the end of August. I'll let you read that. Hope you're as shocked as I was. The problem's only getting worse. And if you keep track at all of the National Research Center for Women and Families, well respected, they've been doing a great job of going to testify at Congress. They do research, they do, not educational, but they do real foundational research about these kinds of things. And they partnered with the Cleveland Clinic, and they were published in the Archives of Internal Medicine saying, we really, really have to change this. Now, joint registry is one of the things that I really am behind. We need to do registry of all these implants. I'm talking about joints, hips, knees, elbows. But the problem with it, when these medical societies or the orthopedic surgeons or even the providers will say, oh, we have a registry, and the Mayo Clinic does have registry of all the joints that they've ever put in. It's proprietary information. You can't access it. So if you're facing having somebody in your family have a hip replacement, try and find out how many Stryker hips or Zimmer hips or Boston Scientific hips or Johnson & Johnson hips have ever been placed in somebody's body. Who's the most effective orthopedic surgeon to find for this? Who's done the most? Who's had the most effective ones? You can't find any of this consumer information. It's all proprietary. So it's in a silo, and you can see that silo isn't doing very well. It's rusty. It's got, it's just old-fashioned. That's what's happening right now. So, metal on metal hips. That's one of the most recent meetings. At the end of June, they had a meeting at the FDA. Howard Sadwin was one of the people that testified. You can see he's a very active gentleman in Florida until it was his second hip. He had a first hip that did very well. The second hip did not. He's in a wheelchair now. And he's facing revision surgery. But there are 500,000 in the United States of people who have metal on metal hips. It didn't get caught because we don't track this. There's no post-market tracking of these implanted devices. This is Lana Keaton. I met her through Consumers Union in DC. She's another woman from Florida. She found out that the Institute of Medicine was doing this research on the 510K process. She went to DC, brought some friends of hers with her who also had failed surgical mesh. And they've all gone through multiple surgeries trying to remove surgical mesh from their bodies. They went together, they did testimony, and just a year later the FDA posted a warning saying that transvaginal mesh was a problem. The problem with that, though, is that that doesn't help them. The lawsuits are too late. These women often have lost their husbands, they've lost their income, they've lost so much. And they, you know, anyway, it's very sad to see what happens to women who have the surgical mesh. They say it's like having a cheese grater grating against the internal tissues in your body, because it almost immediately shrinks with the heat of your body. So, yeah, all these adverse events, deaths, testimony, women have to go. The doctors are both putting in the surgical mesh and earning money removing the surgical mesh, the same doctors. This young lady, Stephen and I met when we went the first time to DC. She was about 6 or 7, I guess, when we met her. 5? Yeah. She was the darling of the testimony. She had one implanted ICD, and I believe it was a Medtronic, and it had failed. So she was there testifying about that with her family. Well, just in September this month, there was an article in the New York Times about Avery. And what had happened was she's now 10. And her mother, through just study through social media, learned about the recall of the second ICD implanted in Avery's body, the St. Jude Riata, implanted worldwide. It was recalled, but they don't contact the patients. The doctor knew about it, but the doctor didn't want to worry the mother by letting her know that the ICD implanted in her little 10-year-old daughter was defective. She had to find out through social media. Now, inspiration. I've been doing this for 4 years. This is inspirational. There's a lot going on right now. I met Regina a year ago in San Francisco at the Health 2.0. We met for the first time, but she had already done my jacket. And mine is about Doctor Who. I don't know if you know the BBC series. He travels in this blue police box. He's a time traveler. And the very first, and it's been going on for 30 years in Britain, but the story started in a junkyard. So we're talking about junk joints, junk implants. So it was inspirational to me to find other patient advocates, get connected with them, whether or not they were doing implants. We all have to stick together. This is an issue about getting our damn data, the data about me. And the data about me is not just data about me, it's data about all of us so we can make better decisions. So I don't know if you've heard about Escape Fire, the movie that just came out. I have not seen it yet. I'm going to see it. I saw the Surfing the Healthcare Tsunami movie. You can see that online. It's excellent. It's by TMIT, which Regina is involved in, Speaker Link, and this Patients Included is one of the programs that we're trying to institute in all medical conferences to make sure that we are there. They're not going to talk about us without us being there, and they do not get that label unless we are included in their conferences. PCORI, Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, is a new agency of the federal government, and they're obviously doing research around our patient outcomes. Partnership for Patients. And the Safe Patient Project has been excellent. I've been working with Consumers Union for 4 years. I discovered them because I'm from Texas, and they're in Austin, Texas. And they've brought us to DC several times to lobby. This will take 1 minute. Oops.
Let's never forget. Millions of Americans who work hard and play by the rules every day deserve a government and a financial system that do the same. It's time to apply the same rules from top to bottom. No bailouts, no handouts, and no cop-outs. An America built to last insists on responsibility from everybody. We've all paid the price for lenders who sold mortgages to people who couldn't afford them, and buyers who knew they couldn't afford them. That's why we need smart regulations to prevent irresponsible behavior. Rules to prevent financial fraud, or toxic dumping, or faulty medical devices. These don't destroy the free market. They make the...
So, Michael, post-market registry and unique device identifiers. I'm not skilled at this. Product warranty. These people are producing these things. If it fails, it's worse than a toaster oven failing. At least with that, you can return it if it's implanted in your body. They kind of go. So, patient consumer, FDA stakeholder equity. I've been to FDA. I theoretically trained to be a patient representative, but there's no voting patient representative on these panels. And rescind the industry preemptions and entitlements so that we don't have to go to federal court. And one last one. That's me. If you want to contact me in any way, shape, or form, that's how you get in touch with me. Thanks.